Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Medtech Impact Podcast, where you get to hear from leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of medical technology. I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn.
And we're your hosts of the show.
So today on the Medtech Impact Podcast, we're delighted to be joined by Dave Rosa, CEO of NeuroOne. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, Dave, I know this has been a long time coming. We are creating technologies, or certainly companies like yourself are creating technologies to help patients. But you've been going through your own sort of challenges, and so it's great to finally have you on here and sort of learn more about what NeuroOne's all about. Before we do that, though, we do like to set the stage for the audience and talk about what is that big problem that NeuroOne is looking to solve?
So when we really started the company, what we were trying to do was develop an electrode therapy or technology that would be able to perform multiple functions. And in particular, functions being diagnostic and therapeutic to really reduce the number of surgeries and hospitalizations that a patient would have to endure.
So for a patient who's suffering from the condition, like how would you describe the standard of care? What are they being used to when they go to try and get treatment?
So epilepsy was really the first indication that we wanted to pursue. And those patients, once they fail medical therapy, so pharmacologic therapy, they then go through a fairly invasive process where electrodes are inserted into their brain. They're left there to record really the electrical activity or identify where the irregular activity is. And once that occurs, the devices are all removed. The patient goes home and then is scheduled for a second surgery where once they come back, the procedure is really designed to remove the problematic brain tissue. So that requires 2 surgeries, 2 hospitalizations, and that was pretty much the standard of care before NeuroOne.
That sounds like a pretty intense process for anyone who has to go through that. And I know, like in terms of the big numbers, 3.5 million people in the US have epilepsy. What sort of numbers are you seeing who would get to that stage where they're having to go in for that type of treatment?
So it's estimated that about a third of that 3.5 million are refractory to medical therapy. So about 1 million patients would be in the pool of potential patients for the surgery. But unfortunately, there's only about 6,000 that actually opt for the surgery.
Wow. So even though that's available to them, what's the kind of reasoning behind that? What's kind of putting them off by potential solution?
Sure. Feedback from the neurologists and neurosurgeons has been that most patients, I don't think anyone wants to sign up to have holes drilled into their head with devices left in for a period of time, and then, have to do that a few times. So there's been a great reluctance for patients to want to come in for multiple surgeries. I mean, brain surgery in itself is pretty darn scary. So most of these patients, once they find out that they're going to have to go through multiple surgeries and hospitalizations, really try to get by with just medical therapy.
So Kyle, it sounds like it's a pretty scary proposition that is crying out for a solution to really help these patients who have to go through this.
Well, I mean, what I'm hearing too, Dave, is that, these are obviously pretty intense procedures, quite invasive, right? They're long procedures. They require long periods of time, probably in the hospital and going in and out of these procedures. Just not ideal for the healthcare system, for patients, for everyone. So, I guess how's NeuroOne, looking to solve these problems? What are you, developing to help patients in the healthcare system?
Yeah, great question. So it's really the reason why we started the company. The goal was to be able to make one device that would reduce at least the second surgery, the therapeutic part, by offering a technology that could perform both the diagnostic part as well as the ablation part of the tissue. So that's what we set out to do, and we were very excited that in December of last year, the FDA provided us with a clearance. It was the first of its kind, whereas the technology was cleared for both performing the diagnostic part as well as the therapeutic part. And the reason why, again, that was so critical is now neurologists and neurosurgeons were able to go back to those patients who really did need the surgery and offer them a new technology that might be able to provide them with a solution in just one surgery and one hospitalization.
Mhm. And can you tell us a little bit about, what that procedure looks like and how, the product works?
Sure. So traditionally, patients will get these devices implanted in the operating room, and that part of the procedure remains the same with our device. And then what happens is once the devices are implanted, the patient is sent to their room, whereby those devices are connected to a recorder, which is basically looking to record whenever a patient has a seizure. On average, there's about 15 of these devices that are placed in the brain. So the goal for the neurologist and neurosurgeon is to be able to identify the devices where these seizures are occurring so that the patient or that the surgeon then understands where they need to ablate the tissue. So for our device, what happens after that waiting period, which is typically about, I'd say, 3 to 5 days, is instead of removing the devices and sending the patient home, a small device is actually wheeled into the patient's room and connected to our electrodes. So let's just pretend that 2 of the 15 have identified problematic areas in the brain. What you would then be able to do is connect those devices right in the patient's room and then perform the ablation very simply without having to perform any additional surgery other than the actual ablation itself. And again, you're using the electrode that's already in place, so you're not really doing anything else that's invasive to the patient. So the goal here is to be able to do this all in one procedure so that once that's done, our technology does allow the surgeon to continue to monitor the patient. And if everything looks fine, send the patient home shortly thereafter.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think, what was I reading this correctly? You can perform your procedure also through one kind of dime sized, hole, right? One access point versus maybe multiple access points. And then while the thin film, I think it's a thin film type of material that's placed on parts of the brain through that. Is that it?
So we have 2 different product lines that were diagnostic that have been cleared by the FDA. One is a film that comes in many different sizes. So you can imagine one that's maybe 4 inches by 4 inches. You would have to cut a hole, remove part of the skull to place those devices. And that was really the gold standard for many years. But I would say about 7, 8 years ago, that trend started to shift more in the direction of providing these. They look like tiny wires that go into the brain, so it's much less invasive. And what the way that they're actually inserted is through very tiny holes that are drilled into the skull, and then the electrodes are advanced through there. So take our technology, our electrode, the outer diameter is 0.8 millimeters, so it's not even 1 full millimeter. So you're talking about really, really tiny holes that are in the brain. In fact, when the patient leaves the hospital, you'd never know that patient had brain surgery because most of the time they don't even shave the patient's head. In some cases they will, but whereas the old way of doing things is what you were referring to, where they had to cut or remove parts of the patient's skull. So they don't typically do that anymore for these types of procedures, although those devices are still used for things like mapping the borders of a brain tumor. It really comes in handy in cases like that.
Yeah, and I would imagine too that there's got to be a huge benefit too for providing real-time monitoring, providing a therapeutic delivery, whether it's that ablation that you mentioned or some form of stimulation, and then being able to do further monitoring, right? Further diagnosing to say, hey, did we treat them effectively and are they actually ready to leave, rather than, I think the standard of care of going in, you know, doing the diagnostic side, bringing them back for the procedure, performing that procedure, and then potentially them having to come back for a second and third procedure when you're able to do it really almost in real time to make sure that you provide that best outcome for the patient before you send them home, to mitigate the need to bring them back.
I can't even add anything to that. You really summarized it very nicely.
All right. Awesome.
I agree.
Cool. Good. Well, you know what? We always want to try and break it down in layman's terms and try to make this as simple as possible, because, while there's many, everyone's brilliant that's listening to this show, but I think it's important because there's just everyday people out there. I mean, you think about the people that, themselves or their loved ones are impacted by someone with epilepsy, for example. People are hungry to learn more and better understand what their options are today, what they could be in the future, right? So, I think it's really great when, you have everyday folks like Richard and I on here being able to talk with folks like you to really help educate, the general public and the world here on what you're doing. Richard, this is obviously fascinating, I think, for us here. And now, hearing about Dave's technology, I can't help but start to think about, how Dave is bringing this technology to market today, because I know he's got a pretty cool story and partnership behind NeuroOne.
Oh, definitely, Kyle, and educates the word. I mean, Dave, you've done a fantastic job about explaining all this. I'd love, as we sort of think about that go-to-market, if you could maybe touch upon, and I feel like as well, we've maybe just glossed over the fact that you have obviously done amazing work to get to where you are today. So congratulations for all that's gone before this. But what's been some of the learnings, and Kyle kind of alluded to this in terms of like, now you're actually able to get that additional data. Like, what have you actually discovered through that ability?
I'll say probably one of the greatest lessons learned was early on. So I had looked at a number of companies that were in the neuro space. I mean, today the neuro space is flooded with companies that have really exciting technologies. There's still a ton of room for growth in this space. But what I saw was a number of companies that had, in essence, one technology that they were trying to advance. And many of them were able to get it to commercialization, but the amount of dollars that it took to get there and then sustain the company, build a sales force, you'd see many of these companies that had over $300 million invested. And again, while what's exciting is that there's great room for growth here, the challenging part is there's great room for growth. And not all these markets are actually large enough today to sustain this type of spending. And in tough financial markets like this, it makes it even more challenging. So when I looked at this, I really felt like we should start slow instead of go for the home run out of the gate, meaning, go for the device that can perform all these functions. So my strategy was, let's develop a technology. Let's start at square one that it can at least can perform a diagnostic function. While those markets aren't necessarily large, there were some companies, larger strategics, that did have complementary technologies in this space. So my strategy early on was to try to partner with a larger company so that I would not need all the capital in terms of building a sales force and the internal infrastructure to support that. So that's what we set out to do, and that's what we did for these smaller, less developed markets. We were actually able to partner with a larger company, being Zimmer Biomet, that already had quite a large footprint in terms of distribution.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. I mean, it sounds like common sense when you hear it like today, but to your point, like everyone's been doing business in a different way. So very forward thinking. You mentioned Zimmer there. Where are you today in terms of like marketplace? How many products do you have in the marketplace? Where can we find you?
So we initially had two products in the marketplace. They're called the Evo Cortical and Evo SEEG electrode. They both do the same thing. Again, one's inserted or implanted more invasively than the other. And in 2020, we actually signed an agreement with Zimmer. It was actually a development, co-development, and distribution agreement. They provided ancillary devices that are required in these procedures, like drills, drill bits, cautery devices. These are products that Zimmer has already commercialized for other applications. And it saved us a lot of time and actually development money by actually having them provide those devices. And then we did what we do best, and that was develop the electrode. So back when we signed these deals, we didn't have anything that was actually approved at the time. We were able to get clearances for both of those devices. And again, Zimmer had the rights to distribute them, which they did. When we developed this ablation system, it just seemed to make sense that they would be an ideal partner to do that as well. And in doing that, really the SEEG devices that are for diagnostics only, we recently actually obsoleted that line because surgeons told us and neurologists that, look, if we're going to do this procedure, we want every device to have the capability of performing an ablation. We don't want to use certain devices that are only capable of diagnostics and then others capable of ablation. So we discontinued that line and recently, as in last month, signed an extension of that agreement with Zimmer so that they'll now be distributing not just the electrodes, but also the capital equipment that we developed that's required to perform the ablation.
Yeah, and a very popular trend, by the way, I want to say, throughout the entire market, we're seeing obviously now in cardiology, electrophysiology, you're seeing mapping and ablation being combined into one single catheter. You're seeing endoscopes, duodenoscopes, other cystoscopes that enter the body. And also with diagnostic, they want to be able to take a sample of something, right? And they want to be able to do the surgical side, right? And I think it sounds like there's so many benefits, right? It's being able to do all in one, right? Being having the ability to perform less procedures and better outcomes. And of course, we all know, I think that there's advantages even from a reimbursement standpoint with some of these devices when you can perform both. So I would imagine that that's probably, an opportunity that you probably saw with your doctors and hospitals.
Yeah, one of the pieces of feedback that we got actually from the hospital was because these patients had to come back for a second surgery, obviously they were losing an opportunity to treat additional patients. Now, this is really freeing up the operating room for them to be able to treat more patients that have these neurological conditions. So not only are there benefits in terms of reducing hospitalizations, but there's also benefits in terms of just opportunity for the hospitals and neurosurgeons to treat more patients.
Amazing. I just wanted to ask to that because you alluded to at the beginning the fact that people were turning down getting this treatment. And I didn't know whether it was too early to see whether you'd made a difference at this stage. But, when you were mentioning that there, are you starting to see people now accepting, well, this is a better treatment, so I'm actually going to do it because, potentially it's going to be much less of a intense process if I can get this done in one stop visit?
Yeah, so first I'll tell you feedback that we had from a neurosurgeon on the West Coast. He said he felt that he would be able to expand his business just because of this technology. And again, what he had said was the pushback from patients is always the fact that coming back for a second surgery and potentially a third is not something that's exciting. Not that doing it once is exciting. So he felt that he would be able to increase the number of patients that he could provide a therapy like this just because of this type of technology. Now, we actually performed a targeted or a limited launch that we started in April whereby we went to 5 centers in the US and have been treating patients since then. Now, obviously, Zimmer will be commercializing the technology moving forward. But we just had a patient that was at the American Epilepsy Society meeting who was the second patient we treated. And she was ecstatic with the fact that she actually was told that there really wasn't anything that this was a hospital before the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville saw her, but she was told that she didn't even have any other options. And I'm not sure why, because I don't know the full story. But this was a patient experiencing an 18-year-old young lady experiencing 10 seizures, up to 10 seizures every night. And since she's been treated with this technology 4 months ago, she hasn't had a seizure. So she did say that she had heard and been told that typically these require multiple surgeries. So and she went into detail about how afraid she was of even going in for the first surgery. So we don't have enough data to say yes that it'll inspire patients to opt for the therapy, but I can tell you that the results were definitely inspiring to listen to a young lady like this talk about how she was able to regain her life.
Wow, I mean, that really is inspiring. I mean, we talk a lot about impact, and there's no better impact than that. But I think the thing you said before was interesting. Amazing to have the impact for patients, but the fact that there's clearly such a strong business proposal here behind this, the fact that, that provider feedback to say, hey, I can help more people now with this type of technology. And I think even though maybe you mentioned the data is not 100% clear, there's clearly a longer term data play as you manage and care for more patients where you can get a better understanding of this disease, because we had Teresa Prego on recently from EpiWatch, and we still don't understand a lot about epilepsy, why it arises, when people have seizures, how long do they last? And so all this extra data is going to be so critical to improving treatment going forward. Where's that kind of data play do you see in the longer term with your solution?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm really excited about is, and we really stumbled into this, is I think what you're going to see, and maybe I'll use the words of a prominent neurosurgeon in the United States. What he said is, what NeuroOne is doing is basically giving me, the neurosurgeon, a toolbox on how to treat these patients. So initially, it was just a diagnostic technology. But now the technology is advanced to be able to provide ablation capabilities. The next step will be stimulation capability. So it'll be another tool in the neurosurgeon's toolbox. But beyond that, what I really got excited about was that there are a number of pharma companies that are developing gene therapies, cell-based therapies, drugs that are really intended to treat a number of these neurological conditions. So in this neurosurgeon's word, the future is really utilizing treating patients with these types of therapies first, because it would require maybe one or two electrodes to be delivered or to be placed in the brain to deliver these therapies. And if you're a patient, and you can go through a therapy where your brain tissue is preserved, so they're not doing an ablation, or they're not implanting devices permanently like stimulation devices. You're just going in for an outpatient surgery, or maybe an overnight, where they're putting these electrodes in, just a few, delivering the therapy, monitoring the performance of it, just to ensure that it is doing what the neurosurgeon had intended, and then sending the patient home. That's going to be the least invasive and probably the least, I'll say, intimidating therapy that these patients would have to undergo. Now, there's still going to be times when you're going to need to do ablations and stimulation, but the way he framed it was, you're basically giving me a tool to really run the gamut and offer all of these therapies, to these patients.
Man, so you've got the here and now, and the future is looking pretty bright for you guys. I was thinking when you're talking, is this something that's only available in the US, or again, where is this technology available in today's market?
So today it is just the U.S. Zimmer Biomet has distribution rights to certain outside the U.S. geographies. And our intention is to be able to provide this therapy outside the U.S. There's obviously still some work to do with that, but our intention is to bring it to other countries as well.
Right, cool, Kyle. Well, it sounds like the road ahead is a pretty exciting one.
I mean, I think so. And again, just listening in, hearing about now these even further potential use cases from a drug delivery standpoint, again, something you're seeing across other markets, especially the catheter markets. But, I guess like a hot take too that I've mentioned, but when speaking with friends and colleagues in the industry, and now I guess I'm going to put myself on the record here on today's podcast, but I think it's very advantageous for a lot of drug and pharma companies out there to really have a little to dive a little bit deeper and to better understand what's going on in medical device, because we know pharma is so big when you compare the two, right? Pharma and device is like such a small part of the market, but now you're seeing companies that are bringing medical device companies that are bringing products to market that are providing therapeutic outcomes without the need for drug either, right? So if you were to ask me if there's a minimally invasive device that's mitigating or eliminating the need for a COPD medication or a heart medication or an epilepsy medication of some sorts, it's like, how does drug and device and pharma, all this, how do they all come together, and collaborate? And I wouldn't be one bit surprised in 10 years from now if you see several pharma companies start to acquire these device technologies to really provide that full portfolio of solutions to their doctors and patients, right? So whether it's a drug, whether it's a device, what have you, I feel like they're going to want to offer everything. And I get it. That's kind of a bold statement to make, because I get it. Companies want to stay in their lane. When you're drug, your drug. When you're device, your device. But I really, truly believe that the combination is going to force companies to, almost come together for collaboration. So I'm super excited, Dave, to really hear about what you're doing and how you're taking a similar approach here. And obviously there's a lot of great things on the rise. I'm reading about, Zimmer, obviously, bringing this technology to market. And I'm just curious kind of maybe what that next maybe 6 to 18 months looks like for that partnership.
Well, it's already started, but really the goal here is to get this combination diagnostic ablation therapy out to as many centers as we can in the U.S. When NeuroOne initiated this limited launch ourselves, we basically only had a few people, that we were able to use to do that. Now, you multiply that by a very large number, we're going to be able to bring this therapy to many centers in the U.S. That are interested in it. So that's really what our goal is. And the second part of that is, as I mentioned earlier, not just in the U.S., but also outside as well. So I really hope that in 18 months from now, we'll be having this conversation about other geographies and possibly even other technologies that we introduced that also offer this combination type benefit to patients.
Well, what's exciting is you've got a company and a brand like Zimmer and a sales force like Zimmer that's out there in front of all of these, doctors and hospitals today. So, I'm sure that was part of your strategy, where now it's, that get to market faster approach there through that partnership. And it sounds like, and I just want to confirm that, the One RF, I believe that's the name of the product, that's FDA approved today. Is that correct?
Yes, we got FDA clearance for the entire system in December of last year. And really one of the key things in that, Kyle, is that while the electrode itself, the 1RF electrode, is only cleared for ablations in the brain, the generator, the pulse generator, RF generator that creates the ablations, has clearance to perform ablations for nervous tissue anywhere in the body. So our goal is really to leverage that system that we developed. So I think what you should expect to see is additional devices that can be used to perform ablations in other parts of the body.
Wow. So not only are we in for an exciting, really 6 to 18 months here, but boy, I think about that 5-year journey and just the potential outcomes you'll be able to help patients and doctors achieve throughout the entire body. It's going to be quite impressive. So how about Arnold? When are you guys going to collaborate with Arnold here and get him using the the 1RF? Because I feel like you could have some fun with that.
Well, I was probably, as you were, I was quite surprised by that. But
Yeah.
I also learned that Zimmer is, before that, is also like one of the main sponsors in the for the National Pickleball Association, which again was a little bit surprising. But at my age and with all my physical ailments, that might be the next endeavor I have. So at least I have an in on that. Hopefully with the relationship with Zimmer.
Yeah, well, it's cool. It's just fun to see Zimmer, doing stuff like that, right? Because I think in this day and age, in the world of kind of aligning with your customers and, the general public, you want to be relatable, you got to have some fun. You're seeing companies, go outside the norm, so I think bringing Arnold Schwarzenegger on is a pretty cool move. And yeah, to your point, them sponsoring and being a part of, the pickleball industry is something special too. So yeah, just overall though, what an exciting time for you, NeuroOne, and the partnership there with Zimmer. So really, really impressive and excited to just follow you closely here.
Oh
Well, I
yeah.
appreciate again the time that you guys gave me, and I enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to have a follow up to this in the near future.
Yeah, we look forward to that. So New Year's coming up. What's Q1 look like? Where can we expect to find you? How do people get in touch?
They can reach out to me directly, either on LinkedIn, or I'm happy to provide my email address and contact information. But I think you mean as a company. You're going to see us at a number of neurosurgery and neurology meetings. You'll see us at drug company meeting. Sorry, not drug company, but pharmacology meetings, gene therapy meetings, all the traditional brain-related neurological meetings, Parkinson's meetings, general neurology, neurosurgery. So you'll see us at the majority of those meetings.
Well, Dave, this has been brilliant. Thank you for your leadership and everything that NeuroOne is doing. And we would definitely love to have you back on and hear about all the exciting things that I'm sure are lying ahead to be realized. So thank you again.
Well, I look forward to it. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, another huge thank you to Dave Rosa, CEO of NeuroOne Medical Technologies. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Medtech Impact Podcast. I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn. Until next time, keep innovating.